Ladies and gentlemen, as we track the latest on the US trade tariff and how India is responding to the 50% tariffs, we've had a comment that's come in by a Commerce Ministry official, details of which Republic TV brought a few minutes back. A Commerce Ministry official, government official, has said that engagement between the two countries is going on and the talks have been progressing well so far and hoping that it returns to the table soon. The ministry official also saying that additional tariffs will not have a significant impact on exports. However, talking about a short-term impact, saying that in the long term, it may not have that much of an impact overall. Okay, I'll go across to Abhishek, who's getting us more details. In fact, Abhishek had the details some time back. Abhishek, we know that there is a dialogue going on. I mean, yesterday there was a 2+2 dialogue. So there is engagement happening at different levels, right? But what do we know? I mean, of course, what is being reported is much different from what is happening in the background. What is your sense about how far they've come so far?
Well, you see, Niranjan, before the Trump finally threw in the towel with that announcement that tariff against India are being jacked up to 50%, and that was on August 7th. I think the talks had, by and large, gone in the right direction, and it seemed like India and the United States would have a deal. In fact, we had the same Scott Bessent, who's now really economizing with truth and compromising the larger India-United States relationship, saying that perhaps the first deal would be signed with India. So obviously, we have the entire Trump administration tone and tenor changing after that announcement by President Trump, because obviously he wants a Nobel Prize, and whatever is being done now since August 7 has nothing to do per se with trade between India and the United States, or maybe has something to do with trade between India and the United States, but substantially to do with President's Nobel. And more than that, his speech that Prime Minister Modi did not agree for a joint photo of the General Asim Munir, which obviously Prime Minister Modi would not. Trump, if he is coming with some basic lack of understanding about how things work in India and South Asia, then it's his problem. Having said that, talks can go back to the drawing board and to the table anytime that the Americans want. The ball essentially is in the court of the Trump administration.
Yeah, stay with me, Abhishek, because, you know, there have been so many statements coming in. White House advisor, this is an advisor to Donald Trump, Peter Navarro, who's been, by the way, abusing India, speaking very badly about India in the last few days and weeks. Now, he, in an interview, has labeled the Ukraine conflict as Modi's war. So can you imagine? The Americans who started this war in Ukraine, egged on Zelensky. And there's a graphic. Can we please take the graphic of what Navarro has said? And Navarro has labeled the Ukraine conflict as Modi's war, claiming that India's purchase of discounted Russian oil has fueled Moscow's aggression and burdened American taxpayers, while saying that India could get a 25% reduction in US tariffs if it stops buying Russian oil. In an interview, the White House advisor has referred to the conflict influenced by India, says the path to peace runs in part through New Delhi. And he's called India, the world's largest democracy, as working with authoritarians suddenly. Now he's surprised. He's trying to give lectures, saying, India, don't ally with China, don't meet Chinese heads of state or Russian heads of state, instead engage with us, give up on Russian oil. And trying to give India lessons about history. And when you go back and look at history and the kind of role that America has played to obstruct India at several critical points, it's such a shame. But let me get in Kishore Subramaniam. Kishore, firstly on this comment that was made by Peter Navarro, there is another statement he makes where, he talks about it being Modi's war. It's not our war. We didn't start the war. They started the war. They egged on Zelensky. They wanted Ukraine to go to war when the Democrats were in power. Now they've spun the narrative. Look how carefully he spins the narrative, says it's Modi's war, right? So this is the new narrative in America.
Yeah, so Niranjan, America's narrative is changing by the hour, by the day. So NATO has no business with India, and India does not control NATO. So as far as the Ukraine war is concerned and the geopolitics with regards to Ukraine and Russia is concerned, India has no business in it. And when this war started, we took a equidistance. Whether it was Russia, whether it was Ukraine, we took a equidistance, and we did not tilt towards anybody. Point number one. Point number two. America openly, globally states that America first is the policy. I think you should offer the same credibility to us to have India first as the policy. And if you are going to dump GM soybean and GM products into India, which is going to affect our citizens' health and also going to affect the farming community, where is an agri economy where 45-46% of the whole economy is dependent, we are not going to budge. Point number two. In 1998, when we did the Pokhran test, Americans with had the similar policies where I have one rule for myself and one rule for you. We can have nuclear arsenal, but you can't. So India was imposed with sanctions, and that was the time when India had a $5 billion reserve under Vajpayee. With a $5 billion reserve, this country did not bow its head down. And remember, whether it is the Cold War era, whether it is Pokhran, whether it is now, we are not going to bow down. And with the BJP government in the center and a strong prime minister, we will negotiate hard, because it's a matter of a livelihood. It's a matter of few lakh employees. It's a matter of sectors. It's a matter of textile, pharmaceutical, engineering. Okay, pharmaceutical is exempted. Barring that, everything else, there is a lot of export dependency, because the total damage that can happen to export is about $63 to $64 billion. But let not America forget that it is not India which is in the fragile five. We are in the top five. Number two, purchasing power parity projection by 2038, we will be in the top 2 or 3. And remember one thing, that it is not a country where you can bully so easily. We have the world's largest democracy. We have enough consumption in the world. And let me tell you one data point which will shock your viewers in America. If 10 days to 15 days, that's hardly 2 weeks, if Indian IT workers stop working for American multinational companies, I know it's a utopian thought, but if it happens, the American economy will collapse. And let's not forget, right from Sundar Pichai to the who's who, India does a lot of absolute white-collar intellectual IP work. So let not America think that it can bully and dance its way. Whatever J.D. Vance, whatever Peter Novara was saying, they can keep singing their tunes. But this is an India which has arrived. The biggest fear America has is that, will India be the next superpower, and China +1 is going to be, India is going to be the next Asian tiger, and they want to snub us, dump us, and ensure that we dance to their tunes, which is not going to happen.
Yeah, stay with me, because there's another angle to the story. Now, here's what is very interesting. And by the way, I have to tell you, Kishore, a lot of narrative on the social media, a lot of people saying that, you spoke about top CEOs, right? CEOs in all the top companies, at least in 20 out of 50 top companies in America are Indians. But here's the thing. None of the Indian diaspora, which otherwise comes out in large numbers for a Modi event, they like to speak about India-America policy. Have you seen how silent they've gone? Have you seen how silent they've become? The Indian diaspora has gone silent completely, and there is a lot of criticism coming their way. And in fact, you'll be surprised, it's the Democrats who are now speaking up. For example, the Democrats in the US House Foreign Affairs Committee, they've slammed Donald Trump and his administration for singling out India over its purchase of Russian oil, saying that even as China, one of Moscow's largest crude oil exporters, faces no such penalties. Now, these are words of the Foreign Committee. The Home Foreign Affairs Committee, they've said that China doesn't face any penalty. The Democrats are saying Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian imports are hurting Americans, sabotaging US-India ties, which have been built over the past 2 decades of bipartisan efforts, which is true. It's a bipartisan effort. Whether you like it or not, we've had differences with Joe Biden. We know that he worked with the deep state, but this is a different level of madness altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, a few points here, Niranjan. First, you spoke about the Indian diaspora being very silent there. Let me be very honest, the Indian diaspora has no choice, because the way Trump has been curbing personal rights. For example, if you are aware that if you or me go to the US, there is a possibility that the US immigration officer can ask you to give a bond for $15,000 if he suspects that you or me are not going to return back to India within the stipulated time where our visa expires. So imagine this is the kind of a stamp on individual privacy and rights are being done. So if I was in America, I would be equally scared to express my views. And by the way, for US visas and your green card and your citizenship, your social media profiling is done. So it's absolutely not surprising that the Indian diaspora is silent, because it's a question of livelihood. If you start speaking and you're deported, and that too deported not by ordinary means, with legs chained, and let's not take Mr. Donald Trump's knowledge on history and economics, because as per him, we have a problem with Pakistan 1,000 years ago, while Pakistan was created only 75 years ago. So there's a lot of crap being spoken, not understanding hundreds of years. And by the way, the contradictions are aplenty. I can begin with the first fact of the matter, that he says that there was a trade deal, therefore he stopped the war. Now he's saying there's no trade deal. So I don't think so that this is going anywhere. In the short term, there will be a rupture. But in the long term, this negotiation.
There's another. By the way, Kishore, one last part before I let you go, because there is a breaking news update that came in this morning of an Ernst & Young report, a projection. We'll also put out the graphics. It's an EY report. And the EY report has spoken about how, in pure spending terms, right, purchase parity, projecting India to be the second largest economy by 2038. Also saying that India can limit the impact. There are two parts of this graphic. The first graphic talks about us becoming the second largest economy in terms of purchase parity. Let's put that out. And then they also talk about how we are and can limit the impact of the US tariffs. Now, here's what the EY, the Ernst & Young report said. It says that India, with its dynamic economy, is currently unstoppable. And they put out some numbers saying that 20.7 trillion GDP by PPP terms by 2030, and taking that number further to $34.2 trillion GDP PPP by 2038. A word on these numbers, saying that we may emerge as the second largest economy in less than 13 to 14 years. Kishore.
Yeah. So this is exactly what America is scared about. America is going to see that there is a country which is emerging as an Asian superpower, the global South head, and a good South head, because for global South, we are a head which is a democracy, while China is not. And remember, the kind of intellect that we offer, the kind of English-speaking crowd that we offer, the kind of consumption we offer, the kind of largest market, the kind of resilience we offer, the kind of culture and tradition we offer, I think America is scared, and rightly so. Let them be scared. I think this is the beginning of the end of supremacy of America, and the de-dollarization is going to begin. Let Americans be happy with their own whims and fancies. We are not going to be a country which is going to get bullied. Purchasing power parity by 2038, that's an underestimation. My personal estimate is that if we grow at about 7.5%, 8%, we should double our economy every 5.5, 6 years. In the next 25 years, which is our target of 2047, we will be the world's second largest economy. In PPP terms, we will be in 38 or less than that. What happens in between will be a dynamic ride. And let's not forget, Mr. Donald Trump has 4 years in action, one almost gone. So nothing to be worried about. This is a short-term blip. It will fall through the cracks. And by the way, they themselves import a lot from Russia in terms of oil, and they can't do anything to China, because China will pull the carpet below their leg, and the bonds and the reserves they kept in terms of the bonds they have in the bond market, they can disrupt it totally. But it's time that India called its shot, and we are very resilient and firm. And I appreciate the government to stand firm on its foot. And this is a great opportunity to improve the Make in India and ensure that despite everything, we will become a Vishwa Guru very soon.
Thank you for that, Kishore. Thank you for joining us. We're keeping a close watch on what happens.